and welcome to the Winnetka Village Council regular meeting for February 19th, 2019. I'd like to call the meeting to order and ask that everybody in the room either turn off or mute your cell phones or other electronic devices. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance, and I will lead it tonight. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Quorum check. Rob, you want to run through the dates and see who we have?
Okay, we're looking at the month of March. Any conflicts on the right side? All good. All good. Left side here? All good? Okay.
Okie dokie. That's good news. We got a lot of work. We got a lot of work in March, so we definitely want a full board if we can get it. All right. Item number 4, public comment. This is the time of the evening where anybody from the audience who wishes to address the council may do so by coming up to the microphone and sharing your thoughts with us on any items that are not on the agenda. Is there anybody who would like to address council this evening? Guys or girls, you want to come up and address us, or you're just watching? Okay, that's cool. Anybody else? Seeing none, I will close the public comment period and we'll move forward. Item number 5, reports. Trustees. Penny, we'll start down with you. Report. Scott?
No report.
Ann? You're the liaison.
Want to turn your mic on?
People at home watching, tuned in. So we had a follow-up meeting with the boathouse in the Skokie Lagoons Committee, and we have repositioned perhaps the boathouse so that's now in Winnetka proper, and I think that's exciting for Winnetka, and the concept now is that this boathouse becomes both a gateway to the Skokie Forest Preserves and also a gateway to Winnetka. So when you drive off on Tower, it doesn't look kind of moth-eaten. It looks really beautiful and in tune with nature, and there's both recreation and educational opportunities right there as you enter our town. So I think it's pretty exciting. We're pulling it together, and more to come. You guys will see a statement of purpose on the project, and hopefully there will be enough excitement in the community that people will want to support it.
And just a clarification, because I went out to the site when they originally proposed it, so it's not there anymore?
No, it's really moved around based on sort of really being in Winnetka and not in Northfield, because Northfield doesn't have a lot of interest at this time in supporting it. And it's much easier for us to do the utility work if it's actually in Winnetka. Well, we can do the utility work. So we had to look at floodplain information and figure out where it could be sited. And so what will happen is it's going to be basically an extension of where the parking lot is now. So you'll see a building, and that parking lot will get redone.
You mean the one that's right on Tower?
Uh-huh.
That one? Got it.
So it'll look much nicer, and it'll be ADA accessible, and it'll be a place that invites students and anybody who wants to enjoy the lagoons.
Beautiful.
It should be an amazing facility. What it looks like, we don't know yet, but
We'll get there.
imagine.
Awesome.
And the good news is we
Thanks.
get rid of that cargo container there too. So,
At least it was painted. Yeah. Thank you.
so thanks, Ann. Andy?
No report.
No
report.
John, thank you. Village Attorney?
No report tonight.
Village Manager?
Yes, given the long stretch of winter we've been having, I wanted to thank the water and electric crews for the tremendous number of water main breaks that they've been repairing at all hours of the day and on weekends, and also to Public Works for the really nice job of snow removal all around town, and particularly the downtown. So thanks to them. I know they'll keep up the good work.
Yeah,
Great job.
thank you.
President's Report. I have one item. Just a reminder that Sunday, March 10th at 2 p.m., the village will be celebrating Founders Day at the Winnetka Community House. Jeffrey Bear will be there to speak on the village. It's at 2 o'clock, and you can get more information about the event at winnetka150.org, or just stop by Village Hall and pick up one of these handy little flyers. And that's my report. Okay, item number 6, approval of the agenda. Does any trustee wish to remove an item on the consent agenda for a separate vote? Hearing none, may I have a motion to approve the final form of the agenda?
Second.
Voice vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 7, consent agenda. I'll ask the village clerk to read the items on the consent agenda.
Approval of Village Council meeting minutes for February 5th, 2019. Approval of the warrant list dated February 1st through the 14th, 2019, in the amount of $604,592.24. Resolution number R14, 2019, agreement with Restore Works Incorporated for electric plant wall work for adoption. Resolution number R15, 2019, landscape maintenance services contract renewal for adoption. And resolution number R16, 2019, authorizing a change order for stormwater engineering services. Resolution number R17, 2019, approving a Class A1 liquor license for Paradise Food Italia LLC, doing business as Toco Restaurant. And resolution number R21, 2019, streetscape engineering for adoption.
Thanks, Rob. May I have a motion to approve the consent agenda by omnibus vote?
So moved. Second.
Roll call vote.
Trustee Myers.
Yes.
Trustee Wedner. Yes. Trustee Kripe.
Yes.
Trustee Swerk.
Yes.
Trustee Lanfair.
Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, item number 8, rehabilitation of Oak and Cherry Street bridges. Adoption of the following 3 resolutions is required before the village can begin a project to replace the superstructures of the Oak and Cherry Street bridges. This project qualifies for federal aid for 80% of eligible expenses. Here to review the project and necessary agreement is Assistant Public Works Director Jim Bernal. After Jim's review and the council's discussion, I will call for motions to adopt the resolutions, and Jim is here to give us a quick run-through on the whole shooting match.
On a whole, we have a lot. It took us a while to get here, but it's time for some bridges. So good evening. Thank you. I'd like to begin by providing an update on the status of the project, which I think will be a good segue into the 3 agenda items we'll be discussing this evening. As a reminder, both the Oak and Cherry Street Bridge are located just to the south of the Central Business District area of the Elm Street train station. Based on the overall condition rating number for both of the bridges, the village in November of 2015 approved a contract with the engineering firm Bachelor and Woodman to assist in the development and approval of the Phase 1 report. After a lengthy review, IDOT finally approved that report. The approval of that report makes both bridges eligible for federal funding and the share of the cost for the construction activities. On April 17th of 2018, the council approved a second contract with Baxter and Woodman to begin the Phase 2 design for both bridges. And then in the fall of 2018, that Phase 2 design was completed, and that design was eventually approved by IDOT. Now, considering the proximity of the bridges to the local area and the village to desire to minimize the impact to the area and to the residents, and of course being fiscally conservative as well, we've combined both bridge work activities into one contract. So this will make it a little bit easier for everything. The project was let by IDOT in December of 2018, and the bids were received in January of this year. The bids received were favorable to the village, with the low bid coming from the construction company Dunnett Bay Construction out of Glendale Heights for the amount of $3,345,571.04. Dunnett Bay has good experience with similar projects of size and scope, and staff believes that they'll meet the village's expectation. Construction is expected to commence on the Cherry Street Bridge in April of this year, with substantial completion being completed by July. Once that work is completed, we will then start beginning on the Oak Street Bridge. That will begin probably mid-July, with substantial completion being performed by the end of early November. Now, based on the favorable bids received, the next step for the village will be to, of course, approve the 3 resolutions before you this evening. My apologies, I'm going to be taking these just slightly out of order, because I think it makes a little bit more sense. The first resolution I would ask for your consideration on is Resolution R19. This resolution authorizes the village to enter into a local agency agreement with the state of Illinois for federal participation. This agreement is a standard IDOT agreement that contains provisions and conditions for the use of federal funds, which will be dispersed directly to the contractor by the state, so we won't have to manage that. This agreement authorizes utilization of federal funds for the project at a cost share of 80-20. The village's portion would be 20%, excuse me, 20% of the total construction cost. This agreement would obligate the village for its portion of those projects' costs. This agreement outlines the overall cost sharing of the project and the proportion of those costs. The village obligated portion, again, is 20%, and this is based on the approved surface transportation funding budget for the project. This is slightly different and higher than the actual cost, but that's because it's obligated funding through the federal budget, so we just have to keep using those numbers, although our obligation would only be what the construction costs actually are, which are lower. In this agreement before you, those costs are broken down for participating construction costs of $906,990, that would be the village's portion. Construction engineering, which would be $82,976, and then a share of the relocation of utilities, which would be $20,000. As part of the 2019 approved budget, the village has committed MFT funds in an amount not to exceed $912,000. Staff believes that this allocation set for this year will be sufficient for any billing that we may receive from this state. Now, of course, any remaining obligation that we don't receive in 2019 will appropriate accordingly in subsequent years. The state is pretty slow in billing, so I wouldn't really anticipate major billing in 2019, so you'll see that number again. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions about that specific resolution.
Any questions?
Can I just ask a general question?
Sure.
In dealing with the federal government, I saw tonight that they were revoking the funding they had promised to California. Is there any legal statute that would protect us from any revocation of funding, given that this is already appropriated? Or are we at risk with the federal government deciding not to pay the 80%?
We are not at risk. This money has already been appropriated as part of their budget, and it's in an account waiting for us. It's set for that project. That's set STP funds.
Is that account in the state of Illinois now? Has the money
It's-
been transferred to the state of Illinois?
That's
so
correct.
They're holding it?
That's correct. Surface transportation funds that the state now has.
Okay.
Yep.
So the concrete can't get diverted to create like a wall, is what they're asking?
No,
Just hypothetically.
nothing south.
speaking.
Just to
Nothing
lay that
south.
out there,
Maybe some of the rebar, but not.
keep the trucks going north.
Jim, what is the timing on reimbursement? How does that actually work? And is it a, end of project submittal, or is it are there milestones along the way?
Yeah, there's milestones along the way. Typically, though, by the time that the state disperses the money and they get their paperwork down to Springfield, and then that's reviewed, it usually takes 4 to 6 months for them to send an invoice for that. So by the time we actually start construction and they start getting invoices, there's about a 6-month period before they start to get it. It usually takes about 1.5 years to get your first sort of, let's call it a partial invoice that we'll get from the state, and then we'll make payments as we receive. And it'll probably take about 2 to 3 years total to reimburse them for 100%.
So the bridges get built, the state pays,
Done at bay, right?
and then we reimburse the state for the 20%?
They'll invoice us.
They invoice us?
That's
Okay.
correct,
Oh,
right.
okay.
Right.
So from a cash flow point of view, this is cash that we're actually going to have to expend way out in maybe 2021.
Probably the final payment we may
Yeah.
receive.
Is that because the state is so flush with cash that they
That
take
they
that
don't
approach?
need? our
It's just
cash?
because they're
Yeah,
that
yeah.
slow.
Good Lord.
Okay,
Well, the risk isn't ours, though.
right.
Yeah, but the MFT fund is, we've been planning for these. And
That's
has
correct.
sufficient fund balance to carry.
That's correct.
And then one more question, just in terms of, so this was bid based on engineering information.
That's correct, an engineer's estimate that was put together.
So what happens if there are, unforeseen situations that arise and higher costs? What's the process of dealing with those?
So one of the agenda items is, for you, is going to be for a local agency agreement with an engineering consultant. So the engineering consultant would keep track of those change orders and then coordinate directly with the state for that. The state does account in their overall budget for change orders to occur, but there's a process you need to go through, and if it's an eligible, unknown or unforeseen type expense, the federal government will usually cover that cost. So it may be an increase in our 20% contribution, but the federal government will come up with that portion, as long as it's an eligible expense and not some unforeseen.
So are there situations, though, where our engineering consulting firm should say, yes, this is an approved change? The state says, well, no, I'm not going to pay for that.
Right.
And then it either doesn't get done or it's not built to our.
There's an arbitration process that's outlined in the provisions of the agreement that's before you, and it talks about how it goes for litigation. In most cases, if there's money that's funded for it, it's typically not a major hurdle.
Yeah.
It'd have to be something so obscure that it's not related to a bridge, and for what we're doing, any potential change order would be related specifically to the structure itself, so it would be eligible as part of the STP program.
Okay.
Hey, Jim, I've got a couple questions.
Sure.
Okay, so the participating construction costs that you're listing are $906,000, right?
That would be the village's portion, right?
Right, but if we're on a 20% cost share, that would equate to a $4.5 million project,
That's correct.
but the bids are at $3 million, so explain to me how that works?
So on the agreement form before you, there's a breakdown of what the STP funded dollar amounts are. So let me grab the form. So on page,
Was that the 82,000 and the,
yes, so it would be page 1 of 5 of the agreement, and it breaks out where it says there's the,
Do you have the number on the agenda packet?
117 on the,
yes.
oh, I'm sorry. No.
This is agenda R19 is what we're looking at.
Yeah.
125, or 125 of the packet, right, Jim?
Right,
Is it?
that's correct.
Okay.
So if you look down, there's a division of costs, and so based on the overall, the engineer's estimate for the total bridge construction, which includes flagging for when you work near the Union Pacific Railroad, totaled $4.53 million, and there's
Oh,
a breakdown between the village and the feds, and then construction engineering is the actual cost, because that was a proposal we received from the consultant, which I'll get to. And then there was some relocation of our utilities, which was estimated at $100,000, so that's set. The actual bid numbers that came in from Dunnett Bay are lower than the anticipated amount, so that we'd actually incur savings. Although the money that we're using and the dollars in the agreement are from the STP funded amount from our original submittal application.
So, but we're only paying the actual
That's
percentage
correct.
cost? Okay,
That's
so
correct.
that answers that one.
Yeah.
Now, this is probably more of a Rob question. Help me understand this now, because we're fronting the money. At least that's what I understood in here, that we basically are front funding certain things, and then we get reimbursement later on.
We're obligating our MFT funds towards our portion, but we don't dispense those funds until we actually receive an invoice from the state for that work.
So it's actually the state paying the money first and
That's
then
correct.
But
invoicing.
But
it.
we're pledging a portion of our
Pledging.
fund balance for this project.
Right.
That's what this is committing, so it can't, those dollars can't be spent for something else.
Okay, so there won't be a reimbursement. Somewhere I thought I saw in the packet the mention of some sort of reimbursement or some fronting of some money, but I guess.
That's for the consulting engineering services, which I'll get to as part of that agenda. I can explain a little bit more.
Which is the other item, it seems to have well, how much was the Baxter and Woodman contract, 400?
414,900, and I have it somewhere.
882.
Yep.
So we have an outside consultant who's getting a 10%, who's earning 10% on the value of the construction. It seems ridiculously high to me.
Well, so based on the federal requirements for documentation, the submittal that they need to submit for reimbursements to the states, the length of the project, which is going to be for an entire construction season, and based on the scope and complexity of the project, it's a pretty fair price based on the project.
I don't know if it's fair, but
Well, don't
maybe it's market.
Two bridges, too, right?
a block apart from each other. It just seems like a lot of money. Now, we're only on the hook for
20%.
20% of
That's
that
correct.
as well.
That's correct.
Okay. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
State work. It's market for state work.
But that is, we're
Oh.
paying
know anything
the actual
about that.
direct.
So what we're, so basically, yes, that's where the reimbursement component comes in. We front, because it's a consulting service, we cover that full expense up front, utilizing MFT dollars that we have in our account, and then we are reimbursed for those costs. But that reimbursement's not as long as the invoice for the other component from it.
Do you have anything else for us, Jim?
Yep, I got the other two.
Oh, sorry.
All right, so the next one that we're going to talk about here, this is Resolution R20. Again, with the approval of the agreement, this allows us also, of course, to enter into a professional engineering agreement with a professional engineering firm for construction engineering services. That's what we were just talking about. Similar to the local agency agreement, this too is a standard IDOT agreement form. This authorizes the village to enter into an agreement with a professional engineering firm for construction engineering services. The agreement will provide for an on-site, full-time resident engineer, project management, and complete review of all work and submittals by the contractors. That includes review of professional for cut sheets and things like that. As the on-site representative for the village, they will properly document and inspect the contractor's work to ensure it meets those federal requirements, and will be the liaison between the village, the state, Union Pacific Railroad, and of course the village. They will also coordinate regular meetings with staff and provide weekly construction updates that we'll provide as part of our weekly construction projects. Because this project is being federally funded, construction engineering services are again eligible for that 80-20 rate cost share. The village will be using or proposing to use motor fuel tax dollars to pay for its portion of the construction engineering services, again that being 20%. Based on the performance of Bachelor and Woodman to date, staff requested a proposal for them to perform those services. The proposal that was received was for a not-to-exceed amount of $414,882. The village's obligated portion would be $82,976. Staff believes the proposed price is fair, again, based on the complexity, the length and duration of the project. Furthermore, staff believes that Bachelor and Woodman will continue to provide the high level of service that they have to date, getting us through the Phase 1 and Phase 2 portions of the project. And again, with that, I'd be happy to answer questions about R20. That's specific to the engineer.
Why are we being asked for approval for all the work that's been done already?
This agreement's for the construction observation. That's for Phase 3.
Well, but it's the 414,000, right?
That's the 414,000 is for construction observation services.
Not for anything already done.
Not for anything already done.
What is to be done.
This is to be done.
Okay, and who paid them for the engineering to begin with?
We did.
We did. We paid for
much was
Phase
that?
1, Phase 2, and now that the project's been approved, we're proposing to pay our portion of the total engineering work, which would be that's the 414,000.
So their construction phase for the 6 months is 414,000.
That's correct, for construction
I agree with you.
Yeah.
Yeah, wow. And that's something that's not biddable out, or does this?
No, typically, and I've been involved with a couple large projects, one specifically in St. Charles over the Fox River, which was a $18 million bridge. Construction engineering services for this type of complex type of a structure requires certain certifications, experience with that, and it usually comes with a very high price tag, which is what you see with this. Although those two bridges are small, the duration of the project and having somebody on site for that length of period of time, it is pricey.
All right, thanks.
The final resolution, if we're okay with that one, the final resolution discusses R18. Now, this resolution, again, is a standard form utilized by IDOT, and it authorizes the village to utilize and allocate its motor fuel tax dollars to pay for the village's portion of the construction work and the construction observation, as we discussed here previously. Because the village is initially required to assume, now this is that part we talked about earlier, assume 100% of the cost for the construction engineering services, the village will need to include those costs in the final resolution that's before you. So it's not just the 906 and the 82,000. Because it's a professional service, we need to account for the 100%. That's just part of the guidelines of the federal requirement. Although the village will only be invoiced for its 20%. So even though we're showing an obligation towards it, we will only be expensing 20%.
So, sorry, I'll hold my question.
That's okay. So let me see. So the final resolution before you for the MFT expenditures, this would be for a total authorization not to exceed $1,321,791. And again, that's our share of the construction cost, the 100% of the RE services, and the 20% for the utility relocation. Currently, the village has a motor fuel tax account balance of approximately $2.8 million. Finance has indicated the proposed authorization would fall within that purview, and we should be okay. Staff is recommending that the council authorize the utilization of the MFT funds towards the village's portion of this bridge project, and approve the resolution before you for a not-to-exceed amount of $1,321,791.
Further questions?
Just a question on the accounting front. So do we have to basically book we've got a liability, which is a payable for the full amount, which is then relieved. Partially, it's relieved by a payment of 20%, but then also...
It's on the financial statements, yes, right? But in terms of budgeting,
Yeah.
we're going to have a certain amount of expenses incurred this year,
Yeah.
and then we'll reconcile that in terms of getting it ready for the 2020 budget. And then we'll carry forward what we think we're going to be able to, or what we're going to be invoiced for that year. So you're going to carry the full liability, but
yeah.
it gets drawn down over
I was going
a
to
period of
say,
time.
but it gets, we show the liability on our books, but actually the state will pay a portion of that.
That's the
Liability.
larger stuff, right?
So when we go through the budget, it's just something that...
In the budget, you're only going to see what our
Okay.
20% is.
Okay, okay.
Right. But this
That's actually impacting fund balance and cash flows.
Yeah.
That's correct. But this resolution is part of the requirements for the
Yeah,
federal
I got
contributions of
that,
80%,
yeah.
right?
Any other- Go ahead, Penny.
I just have a quick question, and I ask this every time, just because for anybody in the listening audience, there was a bridge work was done, I think, 25 years ago. And so if you can just explain for anybody who is interested, or, what the bridge work that was done then and what's being done now.
Okay. So the previous bridge work that was done, there was some deterioration of the bridge decking. As part of being an owner of a bridge, you're required to do biannual inspections, and at some point, sometimes annual inspections based on the condition of the bridge. Each one of those inspections determines what's called a bridge conditional rating number, and that's based on deficiencies that are noted, beams delaminating, things like that. In the last rehabilitation that was done, the deck of the bridge, which is the part that you drive on, had showed some deterioration. There was some pitting, and it started to kind of fall apart. So what was done was what's called a white topping, where they basically ground on the surface and put a layer over the top. It extends the life of the bridge, makes the surface drivable. It's about a 20-year type-ish project. But if anybody that's driven over the Elm Street Bridge or the Cherry Street Bridge recently, you'll notice that there's some holes that are forming. That's because that overlay becomes delaminated, where it begins to separate over time from the original decking. So what you wind up having is it's almost like it's two floating pieces. So that's taken into account when you evaluate the overall rating of the bridge. Now, taking a look at things that you can't see, which would be under the bridge, deficiencies such as, and it's not that the bridge is at risk of collapsing and falling, so let me reiterate that. But what you typically try to do is preserve the bridge as best you can, as early as you can, so that the repairs are the least amount. In this specific case, the bridges are quite old, and the superstructure, which is the actual part that sits on the piers that spans over the Green Bay Trail and the Union Pacific Railroad, that's kind of reached its useful life. So what this project will do is replace both superstructures of the Cherry and Oak Street Bridge at the same time, which should buy another 80 to 90 years before we're doing anything major like this again.
Given the amount of press attention that's been given to bridge failures recently, I feel privileged that we're able to take care of this in good time, and hopefully...
Yeah, we're getting it early.
Yeah, great. So, thanks for the explanation.
Sure, no problem.
People wonder.
Is it also increasing the clearance underneath?
Slightly. Based on how the the tracks were built and the original clearance that was allowed. We are trying to elevate it slightly. There's only so much we can do before we create too much of a hump where you start launching over like the Dukes of Hazzards, plus how it meets with the existing intersections. So we've increased it slightly by changing the materials that we're using from what's there now, so it allows us to add an additional about 8 inches of clearance above what we have right now.
All right, thanks.
Sure.
Would anybody from the audience like to ask any questions or speak on this item? Seeing none, I'll bring it back up here. Any second thoughts or other questions? Okay, let's go ahead and see if we can get some business done here. Number 1, resolution number R18-2019, authorization to use motor fuel tax funds. May I have a motion to adopt resolution number R18-2019?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote.
Trustee Craig?
Yes.
Trustee Lampier? Trustee Myers?
Yes.
Trustee Whitner? Trustee Swerk?
Yes.
Motion carries. Resolution number R19-2019, approval of local agency agreement for federal participation, up for adoption. May I have a motion to adopt resolution number R19-2019?
Second.
Roll call vote.
Trustee Whitner? Trustee Myers?
Yes.
Trustee Lampier? Trustee Swerk?
Yes.
Trustee Craig?
Yes.
Motion carries. Resolution number R20-2019, approval of Phase 3 construction engineering agreement for Oak and Cherry Street bridges. May I have a motion to adopt resolution number R20-2019?
So moved.
Roll call vote.
Trustee Myers?
Yes.
Trustee Lampier? Trustee Swerk?
Yes.
Trustee Craig?
Yes.
Trustee Whitner?
Motion carries, and we're on our way for new bridges. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim.
Okay. Item B, ordinance number M3-2019, 720 Humboldt Avenue. This is variations. It's up for introduction and possibly adoption. The village has received a request for zoning variations to allow additions to be constructed on the subject property. Here to review the request is Community Development Director David Schoen. And before you kick off, David, I just want to say I was lucky enough just by chance to have been at the ZBA meeting where this was heard several weeks ago, and I have to say I was really impressed with how engaged that group was in working through this. They heard this on a number of occasions, 3 or 4 if I'm not mistaken, right, David? And they worked very closely with the applicant, and just seeing how engaged everybody was to try to find a solution speaks a lot to the issues that we were talking about relative to trying to find ways to help people preserve important buildings rather than opt for tearing them down. So go ahead and take it from there.
Good evening. So the property is at the southwest corner of Sheridan and Humboldt Avenue. Here I have an aerial of the site with north up. The site plan is oriented with the aerial. The site plan, as you can see, is a little upside down compared to what you may have seen in the packet, but I wanted to give you the perspective. There's 3 areas of interest in reviewing this application. One is on the south end, a covered porch that was proposed. On the north end, they were expanding an area so that they could have a 2-car garage versus just a 1-car garage, and they wanted that in terms of its proximity to the kitchen. And then the third area is to the west, and that's where there's an existing 3-car garage, which the ZBA explored with them about reducing the size of that, and I'll explain why in a minute. And so then those are the 3 areas on the proposed site plan. As the ZBA members reviewed the request over 3 meetings, they were aware of the existing nonconformities. So as you can see, the code requirement in terms of the maximum allowed gross floor area is 9,347 square feet. The site already has, before any improvements are made, 13,186. So the ZBA acknowledged that it's already nonconformity, so in their conversations with the applicant, they were exploring what was the minimum amount of gross floor area that needed to be added given that the site was already over the maximum allowed. And then as they talked, that was probably the most driving, it was the most driving issue as they discussed it. The other three variations there came along and kind of reflect existing conditions. So this is a close-up of that site plan, showing you the various components. Again, over here to the north, there is a proposed addition on the structure. So in this area, with this additional floor area, they would have a 2-stall garage, a relocated pool equipment area, and then a pool storage area, pool storage area. And then adding the covered porch here. And then this is where the proposal is to reduce what is now a 3-stall garage down to a 2-stall garage by reducing the footprint of that existing garage. This is then showing the floor plan of the basement level in terms of the approximate location to the left in that red area, the approximate addition to the structure in terms of the garage area, and then to the right you can see where the proposed 2-stall garage, or the remaining structure would be a 2-stall garage with part of it being reduced. So the ZBA, after discussing the application with the applicant over 3 meetings and wanting to minimize the amount of additional gross floor area, at the conclusion of the 3 meetings, they were were able to vote in favor 5-0 to recommend approval of the variations as presented at their last meeting. So in the end, they're adding about 361.5 square feet of floor area to the structure. The garage door, the front-facing attached garage door width is about the same as the existing condition after all of the reconfiguration, and they would still have 4 front-facing garage doors, which requires a variation. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for David?
I have no questions. It's great work with the zoning board and as well as the applicant, working with the board, so looks good.
Yeah.
I noticed the
Very
applicant's
thorough.
here. Would you like to say anything to the council, or? Thanks for being here. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I've have been in the house for actually for a historical society event and previously, and it is, it is quite a historically significant house, and but there are some oddities that have been added on over time. So thank you for working with the zoning board. I think the plan that was ultimately reached makes the house better and makes hopefully sense for your family. So I would support it.
Any other comments or questions? Would anybody from the audience like to speak on this item? Mic is open. We got no takers tonight. Okay, well, I guess we'll just bring it back up, right?
Do we, when will we?
Let me first ask,
Yeah.
knowing that the applicant has been through almost 6 months' worth of back and forth with the zoning board, is there any appetite to waive introduction and go straight to adoption on this particular matter?
Yeah, that was actually
Yes.
just what I was going to ask you. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, then, if that's the case, may I have a motion to waive introduction of ordinance number M3, 2019?
So moved.
Roll call vote.
Trustee Swerk?
Yes.
Trustee Kripe?
Yes.
Trustee Wedner?
Yes.
Trustee Myers?
Yes.
Trustee Lampier?
Yes.
Motion carries. And we'll move forward with a motion to adopt. May I have a motion to adopt ordinance number M3, 2019?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote.
Trustee Swerk?
Yes.
Trustee Myers?
Yes.
Trustee Lampier?
Yep.
Trustee Kripe?
Yes.
Trustee Whitner?
Motion carries. Thank you very much, and we really appreciate the fact that you're willing to go through the effort to save a really important place here in town. Appreciate it. Yep, good job. And good job to the zoning board, too, for rolling up their sleeves and figuring out a way to make this happen.
Yeah,
It was
it
excellent.
really is it's a
Good stuff.
lovely plan.
Stop snickering. Founder's Day Proclamation. The council has already proclaimed 2019 as a year of celebration of the Village of Winnetka's 150th anniversary of becoming an Illinois chartered municipality. On March 10th, a special celebration will be held at the community house that I mentioned earlier, and everyone in the community is welcome to attend. Ann Erickson is here to review. Take it away, Ann.
Sure. Good evening, Council. In anticipation of our sesquicentennial kickoff event for Founders Day, which will be held on Sunday, March 10th at the Community House, tonight we are presenting a very special Founders Day proclamation to recognize Winnetka's 150-year legacy and to pay tribute to the people, places, and progress that helped shape Winnetka's past, present, and future.
Great. Well, thank you, Ann. Really appreciate it, and good work on this.
Thank you.
So, with that said, I will move forward and read the proclamation. Whereas the village was incorporated on March 10th, 1869, and 2019 is designated as a year of celebration in honor of the 150th anniversary of Winnetka's founding, with the official theme of People, Places, and Progress. And whereas Winnetka's earliest residents were well-educated, reform-minded, and included John and Susanna Garland, who bought the Patterson Tavern and added further improvements, including a sawmill, a brick home, and Winnetka's first church, and Charles and Sarah Peck, who organized Winnetka's first school, and in 1869 donated the land known as the Village Green to the community, which is the site of Martin Luther King Jr.'s historic visit in 1965. And whereas distinguished architects, including Edwin Clark, Dwight and Larry Perkins, Elil and Eero Sarnian, and I should know that, it's still a mouthful, Robert Seyfarth, Walter Burley and Marion Mahoney Griffin, Howard Van Doren Shaw, George Marr, and many others use their skills to enhance village homes and buildings. And whereas progressive educators such as Carlton Washburn and Perry Dunlap Smith developed revolutionary new education systems that stress the inclusion of creative activities and support for the emotional and social development of school children, and William Hadley, who after losing his sight in middle age, addressed the absence of educational opportunities for blind people by establishing a school for the blind and visually impaired. And whereas Winnetka's civic life was enriched through the professional management of its second and longest-serving village manager, Herbert Wohlheiser, who oversaw the introduction of the Winnetka Plan, construction of the Village Hall, formation of the Skokie Lagoons, addition of the Tower Road Beach, and the Skokie Playfields, and the creation of a railroad-grade separation project. Whereas Winnetka is home to Crow Island School, a National Historic Landmark located adjacent to Crow Island Woods, which is the location of the Schmidt-Burnham Log House, the oldest surviving home in Winnetka and oldest log structure in Cook County. And whereas Winnetka's greatest asset is, and always has been, its citizens, who are committed to excellence in education, protection of the natural environment, preservation of its architectural heritage, and fostering innovation and foresight in public works projects, demonstrating their dedication and loyalty to the Village of Winnetka. Now, therefore, the Council of the Village of Winnetka gives thanks for all Winnetka residents, past and present, for their selfless contributions, hard work, and devotion, and invites the community to celebrate the history and heritage of Winnetka in 2019. There you go.
Thank you.
I'm sure you could have done a better job than me, Ann.
You did a great job.
It was wonderful words.
That's a
Okay,
lovely
first of all, I'd like to call for any comments from the audience. Anybody have anything to say about our proclamation?
There's no cake.
There's no cake, sorry.
No birthday cake.
Anything from the council?
That's a lovely proclamation. Thank you very much. Darn great.
Good, well, thank you. Well, if there's nothing else, I'd like to ask for a motion to proclaim March 10th, 2019 as Founder's Day.
So moved.
Second.
Voice vote, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. And thank you, Ann. Good job. Boy, that village manager was pretty busy, wasn't he?
Finally, we had one.
For the record, I want to note he had 38 years.
But with efficiencies, I think it could be done in 10 years.
Wow. He was a busy guy, wasn't he?
You got your work cut out.
38 years, and it's a good run, too. All right, well, item number 10, request for code amendments for revised proposed banquet facility at 915 Green Bay Road. After discussion at its January 15th regular meeting, the council generally favored amending the zoning ordinance to allow a proposed business to operate a banquet facility, commercial catering kitchen, and a specialty food cafe. Subsequent to that meeting, the applicant was informed that the space is much smaller than advertised and has revised their proposal to omit the cafe as a permanent feature of the business, substituting a pop-up cafe on special occasions. And our Community Development Director, David Schoen, is back to review this item.
Yes, so the issue staff is looking for direction from the council is at your last meeting you discussed it, and it had this restaurant component which was going to be along the street, and you made the decision at that meeting that you could allow it as, you would consider allowing it as a permitted use, but one of the conditions was that there would be a restaurant along the street frontage. Another condition, there would be noise standards established. Then the third would be that the use would have to submit a parking plan for approval by staff. So at that point, you felt comfortable considering an ordinance amendment to allow it as a permitted use by right as long as those conditions were met. Well, given that they can't meet the one condition, we didn't want to come back with you on a public hearing for an ordinance amendment that they couldn't meet, and so we wanted to get your direction if you still felt it should be allowed as a permitted use. If you have thoughts that it should go through the special use process, then you may want to refer the text amendment down to the Plan Commission so that it could consider the text amendment and the special use request at the same time. So we're looking for direction in terms of, from the zoning ordinance perspective, how would you like it addressed or considered?
Great, well, what I'd like to do is to just open it up here for a conversation, let you guys kind of bat it around and see what your thoughts might be on this item, so feel free to speak up.
I personally have no issue with the permitted use as presented today. My only concern in the past was ensuring that neighbors don't have a problem with noise at later hours of banquets, whether it be upstairs tenants or right across the alley. So that was, other than that, good.
And I still think it's a great concept to use a significant building that has sat vacant for a long time. And I trust that, if it makes sense to do the pop-up thing more, they'll do it. If it doesn't make sense, then that's fine too. I think it's a good use of the building.
I totally agree with that, and I think that, we're still getting important tax revenues from this business opening here, and the sale of alcohol, it turns out, is, good for our bottom line and taking the burden off of residents and turning away businesses that are creative and beautiful and fit the community strikes me as not what we're here to do. So I strongly favor this business opening, and the kinds of energy and excitement that it brings to the village, I think, is tremendous, whether or not it has initially a standalone restaurant. And I'm hopeful that if the food is great, as I hope it is, that we'll get a standalone restaurant. So I'd like to really put my strong support behind it.
I guess we're going down the line.
Yeah, we'll just go down the line. So I'd like to have you in the town, right? I'm a little concerned, though, about making this type of establishment a use by right? Because of the parking issues and the need for a valet kind of parking plan, I think we need to categorize this as a special use, and I think that planning, should review it. I'm a little, I feel we've been burned once by this idea of pop-up stores, where there was a commitment made to the council by another business, and then they've really kind of fallen flat on that. So if there is, I think I would like to see some retail here. I think pop-up is fine. I think what you're going to find is there's going to be enough demand for, what I see the quality of your products that you're going to want to figure out a retail solution. But I would like a more definitive pop-up plan. I would like to understand a little bit more kind of what the commitment is and have something tangible there, because I just feel we need greater definition. So, I want to make this happen. I think that from the broader perspective, though, of this type of establishment, it should be a special use. We should go through a review process simply from a parking point of view, as well as the sound and making sure that, I don't think we're going to be overrun by banquet facilities, but having some perspective on that.
How about you, Penny?
I like your business plan, but I will say that I'm very disappointed that there will not be a retail component, and not necessarily that it has to be a cafe, but at least that there isn't even an opportunity for carry-out food. And I do understand that it's a bigger commitment for you all relative to staffing, but that is a significant storefront right smack in the middle of our retail area. And what was really exciting before was the fact that we were going to be able to do both, to use that space as a banquet facility and then also to offer retail in the front. So I would support it no problem at all if there was some sort of an area for purchase of food, and I think, which would be, to the benefit of the business to get more people in there. I really am very worried about taking such a big stretch of storefront in our commercial district, our C2 overlay, and taking it completely out of the retail. So I don't know if there's any opportunity for you to rethink that portion. I think you would do well. I think it would be, popular, but from my personal standpoint, I think that we owe it to the C2 district to make it work, to try and have some retail component in there, as well as supporting the banquet facility that you all propose, because I do think that it really is a great idea. So that's kind of where I am. Scott, I agree with you relative to a banquet facility as a special use, because it could have a significant impact in a particular area. So I think that probably makes sense in terms of that particular amendment relative to our code.
What do you think of the pop-up?
Well, I think it needs.
As a stab at retail.
I think we need to define the plan better. I think that as Scott said, the initial attempt at making it work was too fuzzy. So if we could come up with something that would be that the community could understand and come to depend on, and could generate activity. I'm concerned that just if it's a private business, private parties coming in, it's not really a retail component. So
if I can just make, I don't know if we want to go back up the line, but a point, as I kind of thought through this, in a sense, what we have tended to do as a village is say, come to us with a business idea, you've got the risk, we like it or we don't like it. I think we're in an environment where we have to look for promising businesses where we are also willing to perhaps take some of the risk here. And so that's why I guess I agree, it's in the C2 overlay, it's right in the middle, but it's a very attractive concept. It's proven to be very successful in Chicago. I think the market here is going to be very successful here. So as I kind of thought through it, I viewed it as, we're in a place where it's kind of like, okay, you're taking a risk, we're taking a risk. Let's try and establish a roadmap to success here, where, you know, for the business, they can't commit right now to saying it's full out retail all the time, but they're willing to try some pop-up stores. Okay, let's define that, because I think, you know, if you advertise it right, assuming the quality of your product is going to be very good, which I think it will be, you're going to get a lot of demand, which is you're going to then be able to say, all right, I want to do more of that. So that's where I guess I'm kind of thinking, I'm willing to kind of get in the boat, in a sense, with you, and let's see what we can kind of make happen here, because I think it's an attractive concept, but I just want to have, on the broader sense of banquet halls, that I think does have to be a special use. In this specific situation, I'd like to have more definition on the pop-up, in the sense of what are you asking us to take a risk on, and what are you willing to do?
And I think, oh, I'm sorry, a second question that just came up as Scott was talking is, you know, business during the day. I if I recall correctly, talking about having, you know, business type functions that would be, so that you would be generating traffic during the day. You know, the question is it going to be mostly nighttime events, which really wouldn't generate any additional foot traffic for the business districts? But if there would be a good chunk, you know, if you could talk a little bit about, you know, what your business plan is relative to daytime activity, because that obviously is a concern for the business district as well.
You probably have to come up
Come to
there.
the microphone.
Oh, thanks, sorry about that.
We've got 2 viewers at home who really want to.
Okay, so the pop-up concept came about because I really do want to do the cafe concept. We've been conceptualizing it for a while now. I think it would do really well, especially in this community. Based on what we do and our branding, our merchandising, I think it would actually fit in really perfectly. But again, we went back, we measured the space, and you know, the last meeting that we had here, you guys were very adamant that, like, you know, 1,500 square feet is probably not going to be enough, and that's what we were allocating last time. You know, even someone mentioned, you know, potentially leave room for expansion, and with it being less than 10,000 square feet now inside that we have to use, and I mean, I run a venue and a kitchen right now, so and it's a little over 8,000. I know that I don't have room to do it the way that we would want to do it. So I was like, okay, well, we could do like pop-ups, we can test it in the community, in the marketplace, and then, you know, like Ann said, you know, we would want to do it then in another space, potentially across the street, 2 doors down, something like that, so that we're like really part of the community. You're right. I think we need to flesh out what pop-up means. Is it going to be for sure once a month for X amount of days? Like I'm willing to go back and work on that and see like what we can come up with. If the space is going to be used for a venue, then I have to leave room for clients to book that venue, you know? So if that's the main part of my revenue, because I haven't built a cafe in this front area, then that's kind of what becomes a tricky part. 'Cause I do have to leave room for people I mean, we have clients now that 1 week out, they want to book it for 150 people. So I need to leave room for people to do that. I haven't been a part of this community. I've been a part of the Chicago community for a long time. So I have to kind of come in and see how it works, see how, you know, what businesses we're getting here, what daytime stuff we're getting here, if we are going to be able to get like, you know, the daytime, you know, full day, 3-day events like we're getting in the city. So I have to kind of figure that out. But I am willing to, you know, see how we can make this like retail component work. I do agree with you. I think it would be great for the community, the type of food that we do, the type of packaging, all of that. So I just have to like rethink that portion of it.
Here's what I would say. I like the core idea. I like it a lot. And I think focus on your core business and don't let our obsession with retail muck it up. I don't want to micromanage your business. I know there are different feelings on that, and I'm not saying you want to micromanage it, but honestly, it's a good concept. And if you need 10,000 square feet, then do what you do right. And I would strongly support that.
And I want to just jump in there. You know, the C2 is not, the reason the C2 exists is not to have the same retail that we had in 1950. even though sometimes it's interpreted that way. The C2 existed because we wanted a certain amount of vitality and sales tax to come to the community, honestly. And so your business strikes me as one that will bring in vitality daily, because you're bringing in workers, and workers then have to go, have their needs met in the community, whether or not you have an event. And then when you have events, you're bringing in even more people to our community to see it, to shop in other places, to enjoy it, to think about relocating here, and to buy homes. I mean, there's so much vitality that comes, and by the way, there's also a lot of sales tax. So I feel like, when we think about these rules and these overlays and all this stuff that we've had in place, what we really want is a vital community where we can celebrate together and have, experiences that are meaningful and have, high quality kinds of concepts come that we can support because we are a community that loves that kind of thing. So I would encourage us to strongly encourage you and to have you follow your business plan and to think about, how we can make people like you interested in bringing vitality and other concepts to our community. So, stay with it is my advice.
And I agree.
Look, maybe I want to get clarity on one thing, Scott, that you brought up.
Yeah.
And I think it's important that we as a group, this is an important piece, I think. Never mind the use, the plan, pop-up, is the idea that making this a special use, which means that whole process would have to happen at Plan Commission.
I'm not a fan of that idea.
No, neither am I. I have a couple of questions that might help that.
Okay?
Scott seems to be worried about the parking with the banquet hall. How is the parking different for 150 people in a banquet hall versus 150 people in a restaurant that is permitted right now by right? What's the difference on the parking?
To some extent, there's not any, but I think that if we had a restaurant come in with 150 customers and, right in the middle of the downtown, we would have a parking problem,
But we have that,
right?
That currently exists.
So we would have a parking problem. So it does currently exist. If we're going to say, well, now we're going to add another use, and we're not going to care about the parking and potentially have more parking problems, I think that we're going to have people kind of
but I think it's the
upset.
same as a restaurant.
But we aren't saying that. We're saying that they have to go through a review with staff on parking. We didn't say we're punting on parking.
Well, that was
It's
part
a
of,
permitted use, it's a permitted use.
yeah, that was
It's just,
part of
it's
Scott's reason to go to a special use, was parking.
Just to have a plan.
Isn't staff already reviewing parking plans?
Well, the
valet.
whole valet thing is
Right.
part of the deal too, right? I mean, David,
David, what was the parking?
or is that changed now too?
You mean what was proposed?
Yeah, before, didn't we?
Yeah. One of the conditions they need to submit for approval a parking and loading plan that would be reviewed by the community development director.
Right.
And that was only because of the valet parking, correct?
It was in general parking, and valet parking would be part of that, but it
Right.
would be an overall look at parking. Our current parking requirement, you could go from a retail use to a restaurant use in that space, and there's no additional parking required.
Correct.
And I think if
The thought
anything,
was
I
that
think
we
it
would
works.
take a look at how they were going to handle parking because it's a little different than a restaurant in terms of the length of stay and the peaks of coming and going. So it may be a little different. It's pretty similar, but the thought was if the council had concerns that we would, have them present
Right.
a parking plan on how they would address parking.
And one could say that a 150-seat restaurant is actually more parking intensive than 150 people in a banquet hall, because you've also got people at a bar waiting, you got people waiting to be seated.
well, you
So you can
also,
have extra 200.
Well, the issue,
turnover.
You
the
have more
issue is,
turnover in a restaurant.
the issue is
in an event
that,
space, you have party buses, Uber,
Right.
very few people driving.
well, here's the deal, and I think that, I think perhaps we need to be cautious in that it's not, for example, if you have an event for 150 people in the middle of the day, we're making an ordinance change which is going out into the future. It's not just particular for this particular use, but just thinking ahead. So that if you're having an event with 150 people arriving at roughly the same time, there is the potential for traffic conflicts. And so, typically with the special uses that we have are uses that potentially provide traffic problems. And relative to a restaurant where you have smaller parties coming and going, I personally, relative to the other kinds of special uses that we have, it's like a church or something like that, where you've got a lot of people coming and going at the same time. It seems to make sense relative to our other special use requirements. If, maybe we need to revisit our special use requirement altogether, but at this moment, just as making, not just for you all, but in terms of making an amendment in general, I think it should be, it should fall into the special use category.
Yeah, and not to be smug about it, but to me, and this is just some of my common sense observation, is that a parking problem in that stretch of Green Bay Road in the evenings would be a high-class problem, because the place is a ghost town right now. And the nice thing about this particular use is it generates activity at a time where there is nothing going on in that stretch, so.
The reverse,
Well,
though, is
but what
during
if
the
it's during
day
the day?
is more problematic.
Right. Well, but during the day, I mean, what is your split of daytime versus, I mean, daytime weekday?
Right. It's mostly weekends if it's
I
daytime.
mean, what's the split? I mean, 80/20,
Yeah.
60/40?
No, more like 80/20.
So you will have some daytime events.
We will. Weekend to daytime, like weekday, daytime.
So
I'm talking day to evening.
Same. I mean, way more events in the evening than daytime currently, in my current model in the West Loop.
So if you're doing full-day retreats, you're starting early then? Question mark?
Yeah, it's usually starting by like 9 or something.
And it's pretty quiet in our downtown at 9.
yeah, but those cars would be there all day, or
Now with a 2-hour parking zone.
Right.
I think well, yeah, that's another. Yeah, if it's 2-hour parking, then maybe you're forced into.
You got to park in the deck.
Right,
You gotta
over the
be
garage.
forced into the deck. potentially. Yeah.
And are we talking about the amendment just in general, how we think about it, or for this particular?
Well, the key thing is if it's special use, as Scott suggests, then it's got to go down to Plan Commission and go through that process
to
and then come
propose-
back to us.
Can I just propose
Sure.
maybe that we don't have to do that? Right? This is the second time we've had this discussion, to now say, okay, we've heard this, we've had all this discussion, now go have the same discussion with the Plan Commission. I'm not sure what we gain from that. I think that from the broader perspective, as we think about defining the special uses, that we've been also working on in parallel to this, putting this in that category for if there's a future situation,
Wow.
I think is something that should be done. I don't see what we gain in this particular situation to say, go to the Plan Commission and talk to them and educate them, and that just takes more time. I don't think we get any more educated.
So then we would hold off on the text amendment?
Yeah.
Well, how would we entitle such a use? Anybody got any ideas on how we entitle this?
You have to do a parking study, right?
No,
That's already in
no,
there.
no parking study.
No, I mean, how do we get to an entitlement, Ann? That's probably the key question. The parking will be part of that conversation, but how do we get to an actual entitlement of this use in this location when there isn't a restaurant?
So it's-
David, maybe you got some ideas.
I always felt that this was a catering establishment. Isn't this already permitted?
Well, we have
They got a catering kitchen. I mean, it's,
Yeah, catering is done off-site.
Help us, David.
Well, so the interpretation has been that we do allow catering kitchens, we don't allow banquet halls. Banquet halls can function differently than a restaurant. So to get to Trustee Meyer's point, if we allow this, if we would have allowed this banquet facility under our current regulations, then any future banquet hall could come and be allowed by right. So I don't know
So
how.
we're setting a precedent that has to be carried forward?
no.
We don't have to, right? We can,
You can,
Help us, Peter.
you can create a text amendment that allows you to grant this one, and then and that text amendment will then,
I got a very
future ones will be a special use.
odd,
Well, if you can word that, then.
Yeah, but that, I know what your concern is, but that we'd have to write it that way if you don't want to
Yeah.
send this one back down.
I have an odd scenario question. What if you have a restaurant in town today that does the private parties and stuff, and then they realize, hey, I make a lot more money in private parties, I'm just going to have private parties only. what happens to an existing restaurant that currently switches to that format in our zoning ordinance?
If it started to function as a banquet facility,
Yeah, right, well, as
it would
private
be-
parties only.
it's,
Even just sometimes.
Well, they do that sometimes now.
And Minos does that.
Right, so is
Yeah,
that
so are they
a
operating as a
violation?
banquet hall?
No.
no, not on a regular basis.
Primary?
Yeah,
They're
it's gotta be-
primarily a restaurant.
I mean, that's the way you'd interpret it.
Because, again.
So to your
this is-
question, it would be somewhat similar to a use going in without getting approvals by the village, and you'd have to approach the property owner and have them come back to the village to get the right approvals, if the nature of their business was not
Switched over.
consistent with zoning. And those are always
Right.
tricky, right?
Yeah, so I think you
Thankfully,
know
we
how I
don't have
feel.
too many of those.
The parking's not an issue, allow the use, and as far as the pop-ups, instead of trying to squeeze them into some kind of pop-up thing, leave it out. If it happens somewhere down the road,
Yeah,
let it
right.
happen.
Focus on your business and figure out
Yeah,
what
let's,
works.
yeah.
So,
Because again, she could sit here right now and say, yeah, I'll do pop-ups, every Friday night, and not do it. And what are we going to
Well,
do?
and that's a little bit of what I'm.
That just
concerned
happened.
about, Right, that's, you know,
You know, one
Yeah,
big,
that-
They
that's
might
what's
want to
happened
do
to it.
First Fridays pop-up when everybody's out.
And then as far as
Yeah.
creating traffic in the town, at that area at night, if you have these functions that, in the evenings, I encourage the businesses to stay open.
yeah.
Later at night, keep your lights on, keep your stores open, and you'll get more foot traffic, like other visitor-type areas that other people visit
So, Ms. Vasquez, when do you want to open?
soon.
tomorrow.
Because your store, you lose your space down in Chicago. I can't remember when.
Well, the lease is up July 1st, but I've spoken to the landlord, and we can do a kind of a month-to-month extension as we need. I would like to be open by October 1.
So when do you have to sign a lease and get started to be open October 1?
I would like construction would have to probably get started by like April, April, May. It's
Tough
aggressive.
schedule.
Tight.
Yeah. Yeah, if it's causing a lot of heartburn, I would say just approve this as a text amendment under the food and beverage services permitted use, identifying the specific facility. And we can have a bigger discussion about our feelings about banquet halls versus catering establishments at another date. But I honestly don't see a flood of those businesses
I
coming.
would
But
tend to agree, I tend to agree with that.
Yeah.
I'm fine with that approach, I don't know. if
Well,
anybody's
Yeah,
fine with
that makes sense.
But I'm not comfortable completely just saying it's a 100% banquet facility, and then that's all it is.
And,
Oh.
I do wish very much, I'm having a difficult time approving it just as a banquet because that is our prime retail district. And the reason it's retail district is because we want people in there during the day moving around. So, anything, because I'm obviously a voice of minority here, but I would like very much to have anything we can do to support our retail community, right?
Is there any commitment you can make to a regular schedule of retail activity if it's, Fridays and Saturdays, or Wednesdays and Fridays, or something that we could hang our hat on as a regular daytime activity generator?
Or if you took until March 12th to come up with a
Right,
plan.
right, yeah, I don't want to
Back
put you
and rather than
on the,
off
right,
top of your head, I
exactly,
mean, could
exactly.
we- Could review.
Weekends are going to be busy for us for events, so we definitely can't commit.
Right.
Even a Sunday, we do a lot of showers in the
Sure.
mornings. So if anything, it would be a weekday situation.
You're off cycle.
Wednesday, there's music in the park,
In the summertime.
summertime, and the Grand brings hot dogs over, and, there's food.
And box
How long
lunch?
has that building been vacant? Do we know?
Yeah, and,
Several years.
right, and again, I
Keep that in mind.
support
we're all
the
trying to
business,
get to
definitely,
getting that
definitely,
in.
right,
So
right,
why
We're all
squeeze
working toward
the
getting this.
right,
the
right.
pop-up thing?
So,
We lost a lot of square feet, it's not just a little.
Yeah.
yeah, and I understand with the cafe, I definitely understand that,
And then they
right,
measured,
Yep.
usable, it went down to 8,100 square feet.
right, right,
Again, it goes-
Carve out 1,500 plus the area to walk into.
yep,
We're gonna
Separately,
lose all that,
right,
to
right.
walk into the banquet area or the reception area a lot more. Right now, she's at 8,000 square feet at her current rate. Carving out a 1,500 square foot plus another 400 or 500 that you need for the hallway, you're at 2,000.
Right, no, and I understand relative to the cafe,
And I'm
I
certainly
completely
not
understand
asking
that, yeah, no, the only thing I was hoping that maybe, again, see if it works for your business plan, if, carry out to establish your name in the community, and get your good food out there, and if
Right.
that would work.
One thing, and you may not appreciate this, so the pop-up experience you're hearing about has to deal with something that's totally unrelated to you. We had a
Yeah,
real
right.
estate agency,
Yeah.
which is not a preferred use, and there's some back and forth on that. And I just want to point out, this is a very different situation. This is a concept that I really like at its core, and I really wouldn't want to do anything to screw that up.
No, I agree that we support the business, but.
But I'm not
I say-
sure, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I'm not hearing you say that testing a retail concept is against your business plan.
Right.
No.
I'm.
You want to
100%,
do
I
that.
want to do that.
All I'm saying is, I'd like to know how much you want to do that, so that, we've got some precedent here and some continuity to what our standards are.
And that we're saying that we totally understand the 1,500 square foot for
Yeah.
a cafe just
Yeah.
doesn't work. We
Yeah.
totally get that.
In that space, I
right,
get
right.
it. It's, you're not going to have a 5-day, 6-day-a-week retail space.
Well, an ancillary retail is basically intended to be an incubator for potential
Right.
businesses, and it allows you to take a sniff at it without making a full-blown commitment. So-
Basically, I just want to eat your good food without having to have a private party,
Right.
let's face it.
I feel like we can work something out.
I would feel more comfortable if we said, our intent is we're not going to force you down to some lower commission to run through this again. We can make the decision. I'm comfortable making a decision. I would like to know, what fits within your business plan so that we as a village can have some understanding of, what it takes. And if we can do that, by the middle of March, which keeps you on your schedule, then that seems to meet everybody's requirements.
David, are you hearing anything that you can use?
Just make it happen, David.
Andy and Peter.
It's like you want a special use, but you don't want a special.
No.
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 So,
No,
Okay,
but,
set aside the special use.
yeah,
Set
so,
aside the special use.
but
David, what we want to do is just a text amendment, and Peter's got it, and we would just do a text amendment making this a permitted use,
So that, as approved by you.
as approved by us in this case. And we're not tackling the larger question of banquet halls.
you'll come up with something, Peter? Okay.
It's late.
No, I will.
It's just
Yeah, it's totally
atypical.
doable.
It is atypical.
Yeah.
We're trying to
If the
prove
attorney believes
we're
you
trying to
can do
prove
it,
our
then-
flexibility and our willingness to bring businesses in.
Winnetka is open for business.
Exactly. It's a new day.
We want families.
So we go from over-planning to anarchy all in once.
But if the anarchy looks like their place is a beautiful.
Yes, it is.
Exactly.
I won't argue with that, but David, I understand your frustration that, we do need rules, much as I hate that word, but we do need them for orderly development and growth in the community, and when you get these oddballs thrown at you, or things that we've never had to deal with, it makes it pretty tricky, especially when we want to make, and I want you to hear this, we're making a special accommodation for this particular applicant because we want to encourage new and different businesses to come to the community. And we are hoping, as has been said before, that there's a partnership here. And there's a respect for each other's constraints, and there's a respect for each other's, this group is really sticking their neck out to make this thing happen. And there has to be an appreciation that we are working hard to try to find a way to bring you into this community and make you successful. And, that requires, and that's much to Andy's statement, we tried to work out with somebody, and we ended up getting burned, and now we're hearing about it all the time, that, we were bamboozled, and we should have known better, and it's not happening. And certainly we're concerned about that. That's why maybe some sort of a clearer plan of how you're going to approach this whole thing that can give us the comfort to actually work with you as partners and get you into this space as quickly as we can is the way to approach it. And I know everybody's different, you know, I mean, and it's sad that we kind of have to paint everybody the same color, but, you know, once you get stung, you start to get a little cautious about it, and that's kind of where we're at right now. So, you know, clearly we would like a clearer plan, and I think if we had a clearer plan, it would take some of the concerns away that you're currently hearing about, and give us a little cover to actually help you move this thing forward in a quick manner.
But I want to say
That make
thank you.
sense?
I want to say thank you for letting us talk it through. I know it seems like it's a little confusing, but this is a really good opportunity for us, so thanks.
All I can say is that thank you for your confidence, but you're not going to regret it.
Yeah, I've heard that, too.
This is very stable. The only reason why she has to move is because they purchased a building and they're going to do a new development in the west. They're going to hire only a one-story.
Yep, yep.
Want to knock it down.
Well, and I guess the good news is they will be preparing food in the establishment. It's just a matter of whether we can get you to deliver some to the passerby rather than the subscribers, that's all.
Well, they do have catering service, so you can, you know, hire them.
I'll never get off the couch.
So there's so March 19th, we have the public hearing scheduled on the overlay district. Yeah.
I would say let's try and have this March 12th.
So,
We do that at our,
which, if she's ready, we have notice requirements. We need to send a notice to the newspaper by this Friday for that meeting. If that's the case, I think we're going to try to separate this amendment from the overlay district discussion. It may happen at the same night, but it would be,
What's that? We could look at the 2nd.
April 2nd.
That's kind of pushing it a
April
little
4th.
far
do it,
out.
could we do it as a part
I
of?
want to make sure she hits her deadlines.
Yeah, if we push it to April 2nd, it's already April.
Well, that's too late. Yeah, right.
Or the 12th,
Could we do it as
Wait,
part
can't we
of
do
the
it during study session?
We missed
we
the,
could come up here.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's come up here.
So you need,
I think we missed the
We'll go down
newspaper
there.
deadline.
It's anarchy.
you'd
Rob.
actually, it is, it's close. You'd have to notice it as a special meeting in order to do business, because study sessions, you don't
Right.
act on
Right.
anything. And then you could adjourn and we could go down to the table for the study session. But
We've
David, what
already
timing?
missed the notice deadline to get a notice to
Yeah.
the newspaper.
For the 12th?
12th,
Oh, really?
Friday.
Friday?
pardon,
Friday?
yes.
No,
This Friday.
You know, that
We
might
still
just
have
be
time.
rushing it.
plenty.
Okay, let's do it. Let's.
No, not for the 12th. The deadline for this Friday is for the 19th.
Oh, we missed.
We already missed it.
Seriously?
the 12th, yeah.
Can we put off the
All right.
overlay discussion? Because I actually think we have more things to research on that.
It's a month ahead of time?
There's a bomb lobbed in there.
Back to our anarchy. Yeah.
No, we have to get overlay done before Scott leaves.
Scott can't leave.
No, you're not, you aren't going to stir that pot and walk away. You're going to stick around for the bloody finish.
When would you like to do it?
Yes?
When would you like to come
March
back,
19th or April
talk
10th?
about kind of
I
your
mean,
thoughts
March.
and plans?
Yeah.
Okay, March.
Oh, well, you said March.
Has to be
Fifth,
the
fifth,
earliest
12th, or
date is the
19th?
Want to do a special?
Well, it has to be the 19th.
No.
We have
Has to
notice
be the
requirements.
When it's going too far out.
Could you do the 19th?
They blow
Why
up.
don't we
We
just
look
move
like
the
idiots.
overlay to the 2nd?
Yeah, I mean, sooner is better than later for me. So whatever the date is.
Would you want to do it on the
Go to the 19th.
March 19th.
Yeah.
But we hopefully you can put together a decent presentation with the entire business plan, so we
Okay.
can have a little cover and talk about it intelligently.
Okay.
Okay?
David, just to clarify, are we going to bring back each of the components, though, the valet as well as the liquor at the same time?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Do we need to talk about the valet at all today?
No.
Okay, all right.
Or it's supposed to have a special meeting?
Okay.
I thought it was a special meeting.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, David.
Wow.
Hang in there.
Come on, you don't want a boring job.
So what is it, 3 weeks in advance for the notice for a special?
So he's going to have this in the overlay district on the same
I know.
A week before the 15 days. A week before the 15 days.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Thank you.
We're doing it.
And I think you can infer that item 4 on the agenda, liquor code, yes, valet, yes. Okay. All right, moving right along. Item 11, appointments. Oh, of course, I'm sorry. Can you come up to the podium? You've been so quiet, I neglected to open the,
I'm Hillary Jambor. I'm here tonight because my boys need to be here for Eagle Scouts to observe the council. But I actually am a tenant across the street from you where you want to do your building on the second floor. It's a business. It's not a retail space. And we've been there for 5+ years. We need more business down there. It's not a ghost town. It's getting better, but the more the merrier. So good luck.
thanks.
You're not in Chicago anymore.
I was wondering why you were sticking around so long. These two poor guys, they had to sit through all that just so we could, thank you very much.
Not over yet.
It's not over yet. You're missing the best part.
Good night, guys.
Thanks, yeah.
Thanks. Yeah, I know. They said they knew you. They know Brendan, too. Okay, appointments. Just so a little background, I spoke with Tina Dahlman at some length about continuing forward. I think this is a critical time in the Plan Commission, and I would like to have consistent leadership with the work on the comp plan already started. And she recognizes the amount of heavy lifting that's going to be required to actually, whether they modify the existing plan or create a completely new one, that's going to be a lot of work on all fronts. And she says she's up for it and would really be pleased to continue on. So after I had that conversation, she agreed to serve for another full term as chairman of the Plan Commission. And I would like to have a motion to reappoint Tina Dahlman as the chair of the Plan Commission for a full term.
So moved.
Second.
Voice vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries.
And I'd like to thank her because that will be a hefty bit of work. So, she's got some great leadership, so thank you.
Yeah, and she's in the business and understands what it's all about, so I really appreciate her willingness to step up and continue forward. And it's one more item Kathy can check off her list. Okay, closed session tonight. There is none. Adjournment. May I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Voice vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We stand adjourned.